represented here. And there are universities on there, there are other organizations that you might be able to partner with. And these are people who have stepped forward and said, we're really interested in trying new things. And so they might be people that you could connect with. I'm going to make one more comment and then we can have a conversation. Diane was just talking about primarily our colleges and our financial aid system, and how financial aid, because the government disperses a lot of money, it's $150 billion per year, which for us is a lot of money. Maybe in your scale it's a smaller amount, but a lot of money in financial aid every year goes to our traditional colleges and universities. So it can be 2-year colleges, can be 4-year colleges. But we have increasingly seen, and I suspect you have as well, that there is a growing number of organizations out there that teach students. And so there's a lot of online learning programs. There's the MOOCs, the massively open online courses. There are just other platforms. There are boot camps, which are these short-term training programs, apprenticeships. There's many, many different ways that people can learn. And our financial aid system really only covers the traditional sector. And through our challenge and through some of the other work we're doing, we're trying to encourage people to think about the post-secondary education, the higher education system, as this much broader ecosystem of learning. And so we've been engaging with some of these new providers, with the MOOC platforms, edX and Coursera, Udacity, Udemy, some of these other folks, to try to encourage them to think about how they're contributing to the lifelong learning needs that students have. And so would love to hear your perspectives on some of the ways that online education and non-traditional educational providers are or are not relevant in your country. But that's just something that we've been thinking about over here. So I think, so I'll stop there. If you have questions about anything I said or other topics that you wanted to talk about, I'm happy to do so.
We have a portal called as Swayam now. Swayam, we developed about 2.5 years before.
Yeah, so I would really encourage you to go on to our website and look at some of the best ideas. There are a lot of people proposing exactly that, where you can use artificial intelligence to make the learning programs much better, and that it can use artificial intelligence to help you select which courses to take. You know, if you say, I right now have this set of skills, I'm, student fresh out of high school, but I want to become that. Could artificial intelligence help you select the right bundle of courses from lots of different places to get you to where you want to go? I don't think we're there yet, but I think that's the future that many people think is going to happen. And so we'll see what happens.
So colleges, universities, enrollment will go down? Well,
so the universities could adapt, and the universities could say, we are going to offer courses in a different way that's going to allow students to continue using our courses and our programs of study in a way that will incorporate the artificial intelligence and that will allow them to continue working. Or they might not, and universities could find themselves outcompeted by some of these new ways of doing education. So I don't think that we don't know yet which way it's going to go. And some people are much more optimistic that universities will
because India is catching up. Because India is the biggest user of data usage in the world.
Yeah.
Using the most used data.
Yeah.
The last 1 year.
Yeah.
And all the houses and offices are going to be connected next year with the gigabit connections.
So it is where we see a possibility of our intervention as a country. We can offer it at much lower cost, and now in India the situation is little different.
Yeah.
Earlier it was fully governed and controlled by the state governments or central governments. Now the private universities have been promoted.
Yeah.
So that red tape has vanished. Implementation, planning can be done in a month's time.
Yeah.
So this is the venture where we can have a win-win, and we expect from you that you advise us how we can jump in.
Yeah, so what I would say, the observation that I have about where the evolution from solely going to the very traditional colleges and universities to the new array of providers, what's going to make that possible and make it accelerate is when other providers of education are able to demonstrate that students are actually learning something on their campuses. And right now, universities and colleges are the ones that are trusted most to say that students are actually learning something. I think especially in this computer science and the coding area, you're starting to see that these non-traditional providers are able to say, our students are learning how to code here. Look at what they're programming. So it's clear we're doing a good job educating students. Give us your dollars. And in that area where it's very clear what the outcomes are, you're starting to see people migrate into those new kinds of providers. I think across education, as you're able to demonstrate that students are learning, you'll start to see students migrating to different kinds of providers. Which brings me to the opportunity for your organizations. Yeah. I think if you can demonstrate that students are learning, then there's a possibility to be successful in attracting students. And so I think being very clear about what the claims that you're making about what students are learning, what are you trying to teach them? Then being very clear about what evidence you're using to assess whether or not students learned that, whether it's an assessment or some sort of, something else. And then you're able to show results. After students went to this program, they got this job or they got this further study. If you can start to do that, it seems to me like students will migrate away from them very traditional programs. And I think that we're getting to a place with technology and with the development of new models that you actually can start to do that. So that's what I would say. Focus on the outcomes, focus on student learning, and being very clear and transparent about what that learning is, and you'll be able to have success.
Which online courses you're speaking of? Coursera and all these things, or something different?
There's tons of different examples of programs that are starting to gain traction. So yeah, there's the Coursera and edX MOOCs. There's like Lynda Learning, Udacity, Udemy. I can't even rattle them off.
Does the companies who recruit, they recognize these courses and apart from the traditional courses, these courses?
Are companies recognizing these courses? I think in some cases yes, and in some cases no. I think we'll start to see more of that over time. You start to see some of these big companies that have large training needs, and they need their employees to learn new skills. And so they're going to turn to wherever they can to learn, to get their employees to learn. And so historically, you might have seen them go to in-house training.
What about new recruitments?
So I think you're seeing companies that are looking to upskill either their existing workers or people who are coming in. Exactly. People who are coming in.
Who do not go to college but they have finished courses like this?
There are some companies that have started to do that. So some of the big companies are saying, we're not only hiring people with degrees, we'll hire you as long as you can demonstrate these skills. I think it's a relatively small number at the moment, but over time, you could imagine that they would start to be looking for evidence of skills, not degrees. But the degree is a very powerful signal and has existed for hundreds of years. So while there are many people who are predicting the demise of the degree and who say, we're just going to go to skills-based hiring, there's a lot of people who don't think that that's going to happen. And so you or I or anyone can predict. You look into your crystal ball, look on our website and see what you think the answer is going to be, but I don't think that we know things right look pretty much the same as they do now. Or in 5 years, they could look very differently, and you could be hiring, degrees could sort of be a secondary, an afterthought. So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you what is going to happen, but we can all try to read the tea leaves.
There are Khan Academy courses. A very large number of courses available free of cost for the people to access. And I think that Khan is our Shah Rukh Khan, but not the actor. Not the actor Shah Rukh Khan.
And he's from Bangladesh.
It's a US based.
US based?
US
Yeah.
based. Not nothing to do with
It's
Shah Rukh
very.
Yeah.
But he's a Bangladeshi, yeah.
That's what I'm telling. But the courses are very popular.
Yeah, very popular. Yep, a lot of people use those.
And India is the biggest user of Khan Academy.
India's?
India.
All over India, all over the world.
Yeah.
Many.
Yeah. Yeah, they became very, very popular. To raise awareness, bring people together, and to be a connector. So I think that to the extent that there are topic areas here that we are working on. So for example, we're thinking about what new technologies are going to mean for the future. So we're talking about artificial intelligence, virtual reality, blockchain, those sorts of things. And we're gonna be convening people around these topics over the course of the fall and into next year. If there are ways that you think that you in this room or your colleagues back home can contribute to that conversation, we're happy to have more people in that conversation. So I would certainly, we can stay in touch and think about what future areas there are. As we write the National Education Technology Plan, as we give it the next refresh, we're gonna be looking for examples of the most exciting things that are happening. We generally look nationally, but there's nothing to say that we couldn't look more broadly. So that could be a good opportunity for us to help spotlight some of the work.
Means I
that you're
can
doing.
share the mail IDs of you to all these people and they can directly connect to you, write
Yeah,
to you
certainly.
about proposals.
Yeah.
That's very good. Thank you.
Is there some national ranking or evaluation available
Which
for
ones were
the?
good and which ones were bad. And you can read about it in the press, but there was essentially a revolt from the colleges saying, don't do that. We don't want you, the government, telling us which is better. So instead of doing a ranking system, we published a lot of information about the colleges. So there's a website called the College Scorecard that's on the Department of Education website. So you can go on there and you can look and see some of
Which
the
website?
College Scorecard.
College scorecard.
So you can go on there and find it's all information. It's not ranked, but you'll find information about the colleges.
Yeah.
And then you can go on and make your own judgments about
Who
which
who
ones.
puts the information, the colleges or the government?
The colleges are required to report it to the government. So under,
So
it has.
mandatory disclosure kind of a thing, we also have, we call it as mandatory disclosure.
Yeah. Your question about the Ivy League. So the Ivy League is actually a kind of, it's a voluntary association of, there's just the 8 colleges that are in it. And so they got together, in the middle of last century and decided that they were gonna play sports together. And so they play football and whatnot against one
Are there
another.
some fixed parameters on which the colleges are being rated?
Yeah, there are just 8 of them. And they self-selected into that. So, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Columbia, Penn,
These are the
Brown.
colleges, parameters.
Yeah,
There's no parameter.
there's no parameters, it's just,
got together and said we are the.
yeah,
And mostly they are on the eastern coast.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so that's their little exclusive club. Institutions, they don't get one diploma from one place, but they might take one course from this place and one course from that place and one course from this place, and they assemble all of those disparate courses and put them together. We haven't seen much of that happening yet, but I think that that's another thing coming. You can also imagine payments on blockchain. So thinking about instead of paying, in cash out of your bank account or from the financial aid office, you would pay through blockchain, or it could be so either for your whole course or for just micro things, advising, or tutoring, or learning of some sort. So I think that to answer your question, yes, there has been some experimentation with blockchain in higher education, but I think it's very limited compared to what it eventually will be.
There is an accreditation system, right? And they give an accreditation of the college maybe after at least one batch being graduated from that college or institution. But there is a fundamental problem. If some institute doesn't get an accreditation after 1 or 2 batches getting graduated from a US college, then is there any mechanism for those students have one more a common test kind of thing or something which secures their degree obtained from a non-accredited university or non-accredited college?
So the accreditation system in this country is very complicated. And I think generally most students go to accredited colleges. There's an incentive, let's say, for them to go to accredited colleges because they can use their financial aid at accredited colleges. If they go to another institution that's not accredited, they can't use their financial aid, and they also have less recourse if something goes wrong. And so if something goes wrong at that other institution, they don't have as much of a safety net to help them. So many students are choosing to go to unaccredited institutions because they trust them for some other reason, or because the outcomes are good, or just because they stumbled into it and don't know. So I think there's many different reasons why people would go to an accredited versus non-accredited institution.
What is the percentage of aid the government gives? 100%.
The percentage of what?
The aid for higher education, the aid the government provides.
So every student is eligible for a certain amount of grants and loans. So a student, and it depends on what their family's income is. So if they're the lowest income, they would be eligible, and you better check these numbers because I'm going to try to remember them off the top of my head, but it's something around under $6,000 per year.
That's all.
That's all. In grants. So that's just straight out money that the government will give you.
Okay.
Then there's another amount of money in loans that the government will give. And there are subsidized loans, meaning that the government takes care of some of the interest. And then there's unsubsidized loans. So students are able to borrow significantly more money in loans, but they have to then pay that money
But
back.
significantly means how much? Up to
I think you might know the unsubsidized numbers, somewhere in the $20-something thousand range that they can get in loans.
but not $50,000 or $100,000.
Not in subsidized loans. In unsubsidized loans, you can get a higher amount. You can get generally the amount that you need to cover tuition. And so that's why you see students who are going to very expensive institutions who aren't getting financial aid taking out massive amounts of money to cover that.
Are the courses accredited or colleges accredited?
The college or university is accredited.
We have this an ambiguity where some courses get accredited and get an accreditation. They add few courses, and we have some technical issues where it's post accreditation. Some courses being added, and if you want to have some tie-up, then it's a technical problem we have.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. There are people who would like us to accredit either courses or even programs. So whether it's in universities or programs or courses, there are people who would like us to accredit at different sizes. But so far, at the moment, it's only whole universities.
Accreditation is done by the government.
No, university. It's done by accrediting agencies, but they have to be recognized by the government. So yeah, there's a whole webpage on the Department of Education website that explains the accreditation process. But yeah, it's a private process done by the academy itself, but those agencies need to be recognized by the government.
This Department of Education is under government.
Yes, we're a government agency, federal government. The main role for the states is to make sure that the students are protected at the institutions. They have to apply. If you want to be a university, you have to go to your state and get some sort of an approval process. And then if you want federal funding, you have to ensure that you're
So
accredited.
this department oversees the whole thing.
No, the states are all independent. They can do what they want.
Only funding.
Yes, but the funding has a lot of things attached to it. So for example, if you accept federal funding, you cannot discriminate, for example. Or if you accept federal funding, you can't do whatever. So there's a lot of regulations that are put upon universities because they accept federal funding. So we're not technically regulating them, but there's a lot of federal regulation that affects universities because they want to offer that funding.